Thank you, David, and to all of the ActiumAI team for the invite to speak today. It's been a really exciting year for us at LexisNexis. Last month, we released our brand new platform that we've been working on for 2 years. And so I was asked today to talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing. I'm very keen to avoid this being a product pitch, but I'd like to give you some sort of practical examples of what we've done, how we've done it, and also why we've done it. I'd also like to say a big thank you to all the speakers that have come before me in the past couple of days. It's been very helpful going almost last because it means that all of you have helped to clarify what all the terminology in this area means for me, so I can skip through all of that and get to the interesting bits. So a lot of you will know what we do, but it's amazing how many people in the legal industry think of us as a book publisher, which of course was our heritage for many, many years. In the UK, they have a slogan, the future of law since 1818, and there's a photograph from back in the early 1900s of them with a big trolley carting these weighty tomes of books and loose leaves around. And that was their kind of equivalent of portable information back then, how things have changed. So I want to talk to you a bit now about where we're at currently and what we've got coming in the future. So our current platform, which is quickly becoming the past with our launch last month, is called Lexis Advance. Something a lot of people don't know is that we've been using AI for many years. So our Lexis Advance platform was launched back in 2013 here in the Pacific region, and that actually includes a huge number of AI-powered tools. Predominantly, we use AI at the moment for search. So we have vast databases of content, information, data, which is great. But when customers are looking for one particular piece of information, that can also hamstring us. So search has been one of the key areas we've invested in for a long time. And AI gives us some really powerful ways of helping customers find the particular information they're looking for, that right information at the right time and in the right way for them to consume that as they need to. Now, last month, we launched our Lexis Plus platform, and I'm going to give you a little bit of insight today as to why we did that, what it does, and how that really kind of changes the game for our customers going forward. Lexis Plus uses AI in a number of different ways. It moves into the analytics space and also looks at providing users with information in a number of different ways. Coming in the future, and I get to speak in Brisbane today, but we have a big presence over at ILTACon at the moment, which is at Disneyland over in the US. They are currently previewing Lexis Plus AI for US customers for the first time. And I've got a little sneak preview for you all today as well. I think that presentation actually happens today, US time. So you potentially will be some of the first in the world to have a sneak peek of it in action today. So I wanted to also take a moment to reflect on some of the challenges and the opportunities that people have raised in the past few days. You are all experts by now of some of the challenges in the AI space, and they also exist for us. We've had to be really conscious of these challenges as we build our tools. Thankfully, our parent company, RELX, one of the largest companies in the world, has some very detailed responsible AI principles. And these have been in existence since before governments have actually started regulating AI. And this is a set of principles that we live by whenever we do any development work. Some of the most important for us, because our mission as a company is to advance the rule of law. So some of the most important principles here are around that removing bias from data and from our content that can exist. And also about making sure that what we present to our customers is accurate as possible. And most importantly, that we can explain how we've got to those decisions, how we've got to those answers for our customers, as well as, of course, privacy and data governance, which all of our customers, being predominantly lawyers, care deeply about. We are guided, in particular, to use the latest technologies. We are technology obsessed at LexisNexis. We have huge teams of data scientists, and we really have a mission to see how we can use it to improve efficiency for our customers. Some of the core needs that customers express to us are the three that are summarized here, seeing that AI can really help. And of course, making sure that any output we have is not just accurate, but also reliable and explainable. So thankfully, I don't need to go over what we all now know, but the next few slides are going to focus on what we're doing with extractive AI. So that's that kind of algorithms that are there to find relevant results, which actually already exist within our current data sets. And that's what Lexis Plus is designed to do. So we've built the platform around 3 core priorities. Firstly, that it's simple to use. We've designed the platform to have 0 upskilling for customers, so that when somebody moves from our current platform to the new platform, any kind of knowledge that they need to have training-wise is either built into the platform or completely unnecessary. Secondly, around confidence. So we know for our customers, this is the most important of these priorities. So by using technologies such as AI, we can help showcase to lawyers what they might have missed when they're doing their work and their research. And then finally, efficiency. We all know how busy lawyers are, and reducing the time that they spend doing some of these quite laborious manual tasks frees up their time to do more important work like client-facing activities, business development, etc. So Lexis Plus has a few different tools in it which use AI. I'm going to focus only on 3 for you today. The first of those is a tool called Lexis Answers. This is an extractive AI tool that focuses around case law. And what it does is it enables lawyers to actually ask a question or to put in a query that we can interpret as a question. It then actually provides the user with an answer. So you can see at the top here, we take a section of text that's extracted from a case and provides an answer to the question that the user is actually asking. So, some examples here for us might be, what's the time limit for a defamation claim in New South Wales? Instead of just giving you a link to some useful information, it will actually pull out the relevant part of the case that tells you the answer to that question, and then provide you with the authorities, a list of cases that have actually considered that point and provided that answer for you to continue your research. Secondly, and this is completely unique to Australia, we're the only country in the world that has developed this tool so far, is something called leading cases. So one of the core pain points we observed with our customers was that when they're looking for potentially relevant cases, they're often starting with the legislation, and what they then want to do is find what the most important case law that considers a particular legislative provision is. Now, in some cases, that's fairly easy to do. We have a tool called Legislation Citator, which aims to provide all of the relevant cases in relation to a piece of legislation. That's fine until you have a section, for example, Section 180 of the Corporations Act, I know a favourite of some of the people in the room here, and that unfortunately has nearly 600 cases that have considered that piece of legislation. So you've got 600 potentially relevant cases that you've then got to plough through to work out which the most important ones are. Leading cases is an algorithm we've developed to really help you to identify what the leading cases on that provision are. So it looks like things like citation rates. How many times has that piece of legislation been cited in those cases? It also looks at our secondary materials. So tools like Holsbury's, for example, how frequently is that section and that case cited together in Holsbury's? And then that gives us some analytics to enable us to direct customers towards the cases we think are most important for them to consider. And they're ranked here, so it will then rank the cases in the order of the sort of how important we think that is, and provide you with some analytics as to how we've arrived at that decision. So that explainability. We could just change the order of the list, make you trust our decision, but what we're also doing is providing all of these analytics points so that you can understand how we've arrived at that decision. And then finally, one of our newest tools is something called Argument Analyzer, a tool that we've predominantly developed for our litigation market. What this does is, for one of the first times, we take customers' own content. So we're not relying on users to input search terms to actively try and search for something. What we do here is enable users to upload a document. It could be a brief, a pleading, a document from the other side that's been sent across to you. You can then upload that document into our platform, and the algorithms will then do a few things. So first of all, it will look through that document. It will pull out all of the case law that's cited within there. It will pull out all of the legislation, and it will analyze what legal issues have been discussed within that document. That's a good starting point. It gives you a great summary of what's in there. But we then go one step further. So as well as pulling out the legal issues, we then look at what we think the recommended cases for you to look at are. So they're cases that are not included in the document that you've uploaded, things that you might have missed and that you need to consider. We then also go one step further. So as well as looking at the legal issues which are referenced within that document, we plot out using neural networks a graph of your legal issues mentioned in your document and adjacent legal issues. So these are other legal issues that we can see are often cited in connection with the original legal issues that you might want to branch out to. These are areas that your opposition might be focusing on when they're putting together their case. So it's really important that you have an overview of those. And then we also provide you with a list of recommended cases for each of those legal issues. So you can really quickly go into the graph, navigate around, switch from legal issue to legal issue, and get the recommended cases as you do so. This has been a really exciting tool because we found that not just is the accuracy of this good, but it's really saving our customers huge amounts of times. We've done some side-by-side comparisons of customers using our Lexis Advanced platform, because all of this information is held there, and then we've got them to use Argument Analyzer to complete the same task. And we found that for some elements of that task, Argument Analyzer is actually 7 times faster than just using our advanced platform. So it's really quite powerful what that can do in terms of efficiency. For me, the most important thing here is the ability to make sure you're not missing something. If you show up to court and you've missed one of the most important cases and your opposition has got that in their brief, you're in really serious trouble, and that can be the difference between winning your matter and losing your matter. So now we're going to move through to what is next for us. And this is where generative AI comes into it. Extractive AI has been great for us. Most times customers are looking for specific content or information that already exists within our data set. So they're not that interested in creating something new. They want to know what the law says, they want to know what case law says, and they want to know what our secondary material content says. But generative AI gives us the opportunity to go a few steps further so that we become not just an information provider, but we're able to actually help users with some of the other core tasks that they want to engage in. Our colleagues over in the US earlier this year completed a study. Now, this was back in April this year. And they completed the study with around 5,000 people. Some of them were lawyers, some were law students, and some were end consumers. So we can compare the differences of knowledge and opinion between these different user groups. Now, for me, it's interesting to see here, we've got, do you think generative AI tools will significantly transform the practice of law? I reckon that since April, these numbers have probably increased pretty significantly. But around 84% of those surveyed did believe that generative AI tools would increase the efficiency of lawyers or anybody working within law firms. We also compared law firms against their clients, so corporate counsel. And there's some really interesting differences that start to emerge when you look at our different categories of lawyers. So what you can see here that as of April, around 40% of law firms were currently exploring or using generative AI. That's actually quite a good number when you think this was back in April. However, in the corporate counsel world, you can see that 67% of them were expecting their law firms to be using that cutting-edge tech. Now, that's quite a big gap between corporate clients, who are, one of the biggest sources of client base for lawyers, expectations, against what was actually happening in the legal market. You can see here also some potential uses of generative AI tools. Probably no real surprises here, given what we've been looking at in the past few days. Highest here was researching matters. That's obviously where we've been using AI anyway, but clearly shows there's more room for us to progress there. And then, of course, into the other areas that you've heard people talk about earlier today. So around drafting documents, streamlining work, and that document analysis piece. So what are we doing in relation to this research that shows just how important generative AI is and how important it's going to become? Well, our colleagues over in the US are just about to launch Lexis Plus AI. This is part 2 to our Lexis Plus journey, and we're really excited that we are just about to embark on this journey ourselves. They've identified 3 core user cases here. The first is conversational search, where you can appear to interact with the search engine. It will answer your questions. It would also, most importantly, give you citations. So a key differentiator over large language models such as ChatGPT, where they will just give you the answer. The important difference here is that all of this content comes from our content set. So we're not giving you content that exists on the open web with the inaccuracies, the bias, anything that happens there. We're only using our own content database here. Secondly, we're giving you citations. So anything that the generative AI, we're using Claude from Anthropic to power this, anything that pulls, it will make a note of where it's taken that content from and give you the exact citations so you can go in and consider that research in further detail. Second use case is summarization, and this is one where we've been getting really great results in testing. Summarization is essentially what large language models were built for. It's really, really powerful what they can do here. When you think about the length of some of the cases that you might want to read, I know David had an exceptionally long one the other day, you can feed that through and ask it to give you a summary of what it says in that case. You can then interact with it to ask it to be shorter, longer, to simplify it, to give you more detail on a particular aspect of that case, and it will be able to do that for you. You can also ask it to provide summaries of particular legal issues or areas of the law where it might need to comb across multiple different sources and pieces of legislation to provide that for you. Finally, and to be honest, for sure the most difficult of these user cases is drafting. And this is where we get into the question of which is more difficult, the content or the tech. Content's always been a strong point for us, but when it comes to drafting, you've really got to have both the content that's powering it as well as the tech working in complete harmony. So we have a huge database of precedent content, which is great. That's a really good way to fuel these kind of drafting engines. You can ask Lexis+AI to prepare you a draft sale and purchase agreement, a lease agreement, anything you want. You can then ask it to tweak it, to make it longer, to make it shorter, to simplify it so that your client will understand it. And that's where certain providers can get into trouble with these kinds of tools because they don't necessarily have the alternate content, the different types of content to power those varieties on the drafting tools. So this is certainly an area that I think the profession and any of us engaged in AI development at the moment is going to sort of struggle with the most. But it really, to me, speaks to the importance of investing in that underlying content set, in knowing it completely, making sure that it's thorough and that it's also properly marked up. So we're going to show you an example here of Lexis+AI as it's working. You can see that it sits at the top of the existing Lexis+ interface so that you can dive into it, but you can equally go into research or other tools should you wish to. You interact with it by asking a kind of natural language question. We've got one here around calculating time periods. And the AI will provide you not just with the answer to that question, but also with a list of citations. This is where it's got the information to provide and a summary of the answer to that question. You can then dive into our existing LexisNexis database. So we're going into a statute here so that you can read what that actually says in more detail. Importantly, Lexis+AI is still sitting here, down the bottom. So once you've got there, you can continue your research journey by going back into the AI and continuing to interact with it. So you can ask it to take you somewhere else. You can ask it, a completely different question, ask it to summarize the case law that represents, that relates to this legislation, and continue that research journey. So we're really excited about the potentials that this can offer over and above Lexis+ to the market. We are just about to get our hands on the code once the US have actually launched. So that should be later this month, early next month. And then we're looking at being able to release this to the Australian market later in 2024. The key part for us is testing. So the development process actually for some of these tools isn't taking us too long. As a global company, we can obviously leverage a lot of the development work done elsewhere. We have a big team over in China, but there's also a development team working in the US that we can leverage that technology from and then look to localize these algorithms. The piece that's being really time-consuming for us is the bit that comes before the tech and the bit that comes after the tech. So that first stage of getting our content right. So before we develop any of our algorithms, we have to look at what content sets are they actually running across. Do we have all the content in there? Is it representative of what we have? If we're looking at case law, do we have good coverage of cases from particular courts? Is that content actually marked up so that the AI can actually ingest it properly and understand what all the different parts of those cases are? And then the most important part for me is what happens after we've fed it through into the AI. What comes out the other end? So we're finding that on average, we're needing to go through about 3 different rounds of human relevance testing. That is using an army of subject matter experts. Thankfully, we have a lot of fully qualified lawyers who work in-house for us, writing for our practical guidance publications. And we basically set them tests where we try and break it and we rate every output that comes out of it. We rank them, we rate them. Everything gets rated by multiple people. And then we go through 2 or 3 rounds of refining that engine to make sure that what is coming out is as accurate as it can be. A lot of people in the AI world say that 80% accuracy is pretty good. That would be great if our customers would take 80% accuracy. That's about 1 round of HRT for us. Unfortunately, in the legal world, 80% accuracy is nowhere near good enough. When we take that out to customers, they tell us it's rubbish and to go back and do a better job. So we're looking at having to get things up to like that 95, 97% accuracy level before it will be acceptable to our customers. So we've seen over the past couple of days a few of the legal user cases that LLMs are really struggling with. Hallucinations, factual errors, biased outputs is a really important one. There's heaps of horror stories about where organizations in particular have used AI to try and do decision-making processes, and that due to the bias that exists in the underlying content and data, the results that have come out the other end have actually been incredibly harmful. Home Office over in the UK was using a process driven by AI to power a visa application process, and they found that as it compounded over time, the kind of essential racial bias that existed in the underlying data was being magnified over the years, and that fewer and fewer people from certain countries were actually being awarded visas. So a real warning sign that they sort of try and keep that one as quiet as they can, but a real warning sign of how, if you are not respecting the data that's put in, you can get some harmful outputs coming out. Good news for us is that some of these problems we have natural solutions for. So our global databases of content that we've had for many, many years help us with these accuracy points. Our content is largely incredibly accurate. Case law and legislation is exactly as it appears in the courts. So we have that one kind of solved. We have access to a huge number of human legal experts to actually assess the outputs of these tools, to make sure that if there are inaccuracies or problems in that testing rounds that we can spot them, rectify them quickly. And then we also have a huge pool of really great engineering talent who develop these tools for us. We found particular success with getting those data scientists, data engineers to partner with us on customer discovery. So we have a general rule that when we're doing discovery calls with customers, we bring one of our data scientists, a data engineer with us. They have targets for how many customer calls they have to sit in, so that they can actually sit there and listen to the customer about what the actual customer pain point and problem is, rather than going off building a brilliant solution, but it doesn't actually solve the real problem that the customer has. We've seen that happen in the past sometimes. They get fabulous tech, build something that looks amazing, but the customer's problem is quite different and the two don't really meet. So we've really bridged that gap by bringing those developers fully into our teams to really immerse themselves in what the customer problems actually are. So I know a lot of people here will be considering obtaining these tools, either buying them off the shelf, investing in them yourself. What are some issues that you should be talking to your vendors about, that you should be considering before you actually obtain these tools? And so these are some of the things that I think are probably the most important for you to consider when embarking on this process. First of all, you need to know how accurate the output is. And a good vendor should have some benchmarks for this. They should have done some good testing, they should have some statistics, and they should be happy to shout from the rooftops how accurate their tool is for you. Secondly, you need to know where this information is coming from. If it's like ChatGPT and it's scraping it from the internet, that's not going to be good enough for your legal purposes. So you need to know what content's in there. We are getting a huge amount of inquiries recently about privacy, particularly where we're looking at asking customers to upload their own content into our tools so that we can analyze them. Lots of customers want to know what's happening with that. I would suggest that that's a very important point for you to ask your vendors as well. In our case, with tools like Argument Analyzer, you upload your document, it's with us for the session, and then it's completely deleted. We are not permitted to use that information to train our algorithm. I wish we could. That would make life an awful lot easier, but we can't. In fact, we're not even allowed to see that information at all. There's a small pool of data engineers who could see that. Us in the product team are not permitted to have access to it, so nobody actually sees that data. Does it actually understand legal terms, or is it just trained on general language on the internet? We know that legal terms can have quite specific meanings, which in non-legal circles they can have quite a different meaning. So you want to make sure that these tools have been through some kind of specific legal training process. And then I think the most important one for me, the most important thing I've observed with lawyers is however good a tool is, they're never going to trust the results. You know, lawyers have an obligation to their clients. They have an obligation to the court not to mislead people. Just because a chatbot, a tool, an AI program spits out an answer, they're never going to 100% rely on that output. They're always going to want to go and do some element of double checking. So the ability to provide citations and sources for those outputs so that somebody can go and double check those results is really, really important for the legal market. For consumers, you might get away with not doing that. They might be quite willing to just take whatever answer is given, but lawyers are incredibly unwilling to do that. A little plug for what we're doing at the moment. Developing these tools and making sure that they fit our customer user cases can only happen if we work in tandem with our customers. So given the amount of development we're doing in this area, we have just launched our Lexis AI Insider program. The idea here is to build up a network of interested people within the industry who are willing to contribute, to work with us as partners. So some of that might just be knowledge sharing. We know the legal market needs to be educated on some of these areas, so we have a program around webinars, blogs that will be exclusively available to our AI insiders to help educate the market on what we're doing and what you need to be thinking about to continue to be the best lawyer you can be. Also, by being part of this network, we are hoping to build up a group of future alpha and beta testing. So we try to make this process as less onerous as possible. But what we really love to do is to give a group of our customers early access to our tools. So Lexis Plus that was just launched last month, a lot of our large law customers have had access to that tool since May. So we gave them early access, told them to go wild, break it, tell us what you like, tell us what you hate, and then we'll decide if it's ready for the market. We can only make those determinations when customers are really kind of willing to sort of help us with that and give us that feedback. So just to finish with a final plug for, we are very excited to be on this journey, but we also, want to take the rest of the legal profession with us and make sure that what we're building is something that everybody actually wants to be using. And thank you very much for your time, everybody. I'm very happy I didn't get the gong.
Thank you, colleagues, Laura. Any questions for Lindsay?
Sorry, I should come back just in case there are. There's me making a quick exit. Go ahead.
You mentioned that you won't use one client's data to train your algorithms. If you look at this from a holistic basis across your entire client base, everyone would benefit if you used everybody's data to train your algorithms because you produce a better product for everybody else. What's the reason that you don't see it that way? And the reason I ask is this is something I'm grappling with my own business at the moment.
Now, it would make my life a lot easier if we could do that. And in the future, there may be times we ask for specific permission to do this, but we'll never just take it. And there's a few reasons for that. Law firms build up their own vast databases of precedent content. Now, that precedent content isn't just contracts and agreements. It's also emails, it's their pleadings, it's their briefs. They have vast databases internally of that. And that really, if you're a client going to a lawyer, you're paying for that intellectual property, for those huge databases that they've spent many years building up. If they give us access to that content and we plug it into our algorithm to help train it, any drafting user cases we do in the future, some of the IP is going to come out in the wash there. So essentially what's going to happen is we take one large law firm's information, it gets fed through the algorithm. All of a sudden, law firm B over here one day might have access to that IP. So we know it's just a no-no for their customers. The exception we are making is with customers' own content specifically for them. So what we think we can do is tweak our algorithms to take account of a law firm's own content in conjunction with our content and serve that content back to them. But in those cases, we've got to ring fence that algorithm work, and we can't make that available to anybody else. So it's really about trust. We want our customers to trust us, and so we're quite honest about what we're doing. Also quite honest about the fact that I would love to take that information and build algorithms, and if somebody ever agrees to that, I am absolutely willing to do it, but so far no takers.
Anyone else? Well, Lindsay,
Cool.
once again,
Thank you, David.